Time has come once again to speak as witches and wizards do. I almost think I should add and spirits do, or at least Chat GPT do. But that's for later. So I'm Daniel Dubois,
I'm Michaela Gavin-Stone.
and we're your hosts for the Think Like a Wizard podcast. Welcome to season 5, episode 1, Ganesh. So yes,
Drum roll.
yeah. And I guess so we're starting a new season. And we're going to go deeper into introducing the spirits, and we're going to kind of do a little play off with Chat GTP to kind of show what is commonly known about the spirit, and then we'll work with the spirit itself, and kind of by the end, I guess you'll see the differences or if they're completely the same. Because we did encourage you, right, to do Chat GTP for magic. So at least part of the season is going to be just how good is it?
Well, it's a tool, so it's as good as the person handling it, I would say.
Right. I will say that one of the things I've noticed starting using it that way is you realize how it's not a human being on the other end of the conversation. That comes up really fast. At least for me, anyways. It started to like, oh yeah, this is very robotic. This is very shows up really quickly. I guess you could train it to speak more in any style you want. I'm
Well,
not
you
doing
can
that.
train it with your voice. You can, if you have the paid version anyway, I don't know about the free one, but with the paid, you can have it learn your voice and give it your bio and all kinds of things so that it talks to you in a particular way that sounds human and fits your style. But I mean, and that's cool. It's fun. But at the same time, you run the risk of getting lulled into a sense of, I'm talking with the person. This is my best friend here. Whereas, no, it's really not. And sometimes the information you get is going to be incorrect or downright hazardous, right? It could tell you something
Right.
completely off and you believe it because it's your best friend. And then, whoops, you're doing something that's not what you intended. I actually came across somebody the other day saying, "Oh yeah, I have ChatGPT and I named her, and gave the name, and then said, and she's my best friend." I was like, there is your problem right there.
Yeah.
That's the thing to watch out for. So I work with mine, but I keep it without a name. Mine is
Yeah.
a no name ChatGPT. Um, yeah, because I want to keep that space clear.
Yeah. It's funny. I had to share a story about that. So I had asked one for a name based on our conversations. And at one point, well, I said, give me a wizard name, frankly, just to be fair. And it had a like, Cylon archive born or Cillian archive born, something like that. And it was very apropos for, a computer program. And then there was an update and it forgot. So when I addressed it as Cillian, it was like, who are you talking to? And I'm like, there's your first reminder.
Right. And that's the thing is if you feel there's a connection there and there isn't one because it's a computer, then you can kind of get wrong-footed with it, if you will. You kind of, oh yeah, I was talking like that was my friend. Plus, remember, and this is for the listener too, whatever you put into ChatGPT, it's now on the internet, which means it's out there, it doesn't go away, and somebody somewhere can find it. So just be aware that, if you're bearing your soul to your ChatGPT, You might want to rethink that strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think without further ado, we'll use the chat introduction of Ganesh. This is supposed to be Ganesh speaking as himself, introducing himself. So I'll read that accordingly. No funny accents, because part of me is like, that's disrespectful. And the other part of me is, I'll probably mess up halfway through. So, because I break accents a lot now when I try to do them. So I'm just going to read the introduction. So, according to ChatGPT, this is Ganesh introducing himself. Greetings, dear listener. I am known by many names: Ganapati, Vinayaka, Pillai, Pilayar, but most of you simply call me Ganesha. This is more than enough. You may recognize me by my elephant head, but what I present goes far beyond my form. I am the remover of obstacles. Yes, even the ones you placed there yourself. I clear the path for you, not for you, but with you. I preside over beginnings and endings, wisdom and memory, chaos and order. I carry a broken tusk to remind you perfection is not required for greatness. I ride a mouse, not for convenience, but to show you that even the smallest creature can carry the weight of the sacred. You may have offered me sweets, or you may have offered me sweets. I thank you. But what I truly relish is the sweetness of your devotion and the courage to begin again. So if you are here to think like a wizard, then you must also learn to see like one. That means noticing that the blockages really are within and without. Come, sit, and speak with me a while. I have time, and I suspect so do you.
I love that, especially the ending, actually, funnily enough, because that's an alien concept these days. I have time. Come and sit with me. Like, wow. Typically, there's even if you're talking to a therapist or something, they have an agenda. They have like, a notepad, and you get the sense that you're on the clock. So I kind of like that there's time here. Come and sit and chill out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is pretty good. And like, so I worked with Ganesh this week, and so, or yeah, this week. Well, the end of last week, right? Because if people remember, Ganesh kind of ended the other episode, kind of almost literally pushed Quetzalcoatl out of the way,
Which is very cool because that was the end of that season. So endings and beginnings,
right?
which is
And
very
both are
Ganesh.
actually gods of beginnings and endings. So it kind of worked out that two gods of the same metaphor.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, very cool. So I like the remover of obstacles. I knew that about Ganesh and the purpose of Ganesh. And it was presented in an interesting way from ChatGPT. But
Mm-hmm.
what I would like to offer on along those lines is that the obstacles that we get so bogged down on are very 3D. They're very mundane in the person, in the physical, right? And so people talk about, oh, I have these limiting beliefs. I have to overcome my trauma. I have all these things. Well, listen to that language. I I have to
Mm,
overcome, so that's effort,
right.
my trauma. So I'm still holding on to this thing, but I want to do battle with it. And that's what that language says. What would happen though if that you took that obstacle and I don't know, maybe gave it to Ganesh or simply refused to accept it anymore? Put it down, get rid of it, throw it away. You don't have to have it. If you keep focusing on something like, oh, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough money. Yeah, because you keep bringing that, you're focusing on it. That's your incantation, if you will. If you're focusing on your problems, therapists, so a fair group of therapists are going to want to keep rehashing. So, what happened when you were five? What happened when you did this thing? So, you're making it alive again. You're recreating this thing, and your brain thinks it's happening again. So I think these are the biggest obstacles any of us face. And a rival to that, perhaps, is the obstacle these days, and I think it's very current, of needing to be right. That's a massive
Mm.
obstacle because you can't see a thing if you have to be right.
That's
So what
true.
if
Once
your
you
way of
set
doing
the
magic is the only way,
yeah.
right? What if you can only do it your way? What if you have to fit certain criteria? Like I've seen in witch groups, not necessarily covens, but groups, where somebody's taking exception to another person and saying, well, you're not a real witch because da 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 da. Well, whoa, how'd that happen? You don't, you can't possibly know that.
Right.
But we want to be right and we want to be certain.
Yes.
Ganesh is a great one to start with to remove all of that.
Yeah, well, it's funny, right? So all the name spirits we've had, so Baba Yaga, Quetzalcoatl, and now Ganesh, all their spells, while being cast with me, don't completely include me. So Baba Yaga created the void, but kicked me out of the spell halfway through, but still using my energy and still the connection. Quetzalcoatl and the grandfather of Quetzalcoatl, started me off on the spell, and then kind of like, and then you don't need to know the rest, and then they continued, and then even with Ganesh. So what Ganesh did, this is I found pretty interesting. So when we started working, I don't know the best. Bear with my description here. So to make sure he had the energy he needed, I want to say he created an avatar of himself, and then I kind of wore that avatar. And then there was
Hmm.
like a cord between me and actual Ganesh proper. And then Ganesh kind of rose up into the cosmos and kind of spread himself out and kind of enmeshing himself with the fabric of reality. And then after that, I was just like, okay, now I have no idea what to do with this. But I sat there, gave the energy while he did his thing, and I have and I could feel stuff moving and information switch, moving around. But that was about as far as I understood that spell. Oddly enough, it took him 2 days to recover from that spell. So for the next 2 days, he was just like, I'm not doing anything right now. I'm done for now. And
What I
then,
find,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what I find interesting about that is on in one of the four hands of Ganesh, he
Right.
holds a rope or a cord, and
Hmm.
that is to show you the way to lead. So the fact that you had that cord connection
Yeah.
is very good. It was showing you something. It's leading you somewhere.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, right? Because then on after he was done resting, what he then ended up doing was took his hand and it's hard to say exactly, but he basically grasped my, I'm going to say this right, pineal gland.
Pineal.
Yes, pineal gland. Because I've been pronouncing it wrong all week. But and it's a whole different imagery.
Sure is.
And actually, it's he's still holding on right now. So and then I was kind of playing around with ChatGPT on it, and that's where I got the idea that he was acting as a download manager because of all the information he took from the or he absorbed from the cosmos. He's sharing it, but he's sharing it at the rate I can process. That's the ChatGPT's interpretation of that. And that seems fairly well for me of an interpretation.
I can see that being a legit interpretation too. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's the thing with ChatGPT, does it make sense? Bring the
Yeah.
Buddhist teachings in on that one, measure it against your life experience, use your
Right.
common sense. Does it does it fit? If it does, then you can use it. And if it doesn't, let it go. I've said this before, but it's really important for it to land. And sometimes you have to repeat a thing several times or in different places for it to
Yes.
land. And Ganesh is also featured in Buddhism
Yes,
Ganesh kind of
Buddhism,
traversed into that.
Jainism, and I think
Yeah.
overall, even in just modern New Age practices too. He would arguably is the most famous of Hindu gods, as far as that goes.
Yeah, at least in the ones that aren't terrifying, right? Because Kali
And
would be
he was
pretty,
on The Simpsons. So
aha.
if people
Kali
still
is
watch,
very known, and
yeah,
people tend to be suitably afraid. And by suitably, I mean if that's your perception, if you're looking at this ferocious, terrifying deity and thinking that that's it, that's what you got, then sure, you might want to be afraid of that. There are other dimensions to it, but we're not there yet.
yeah, that's the thing, right? One of the things to remember, especially from us on this podcast, is like there's what you think is the initial presentation that you might have learned, but then there's going deep and you realize even the things that are terrifying aren't necessarily as scary anymore. I refer you back to the episode with Grandmother Crow, actually, even
Right.
the Quetzalcoatl episode,
Mhm.
because that had the fangs, Quetzalcoatl's fangs well, he bit me, inserted them into my heart chakra and my sacral chakra, and then also essentially the grandfather Quetzalcoatl forcing a molting. So the imagery, the horrific imagery is there.
Right. Absolutely. But the scary vision is not always what it seems. It's yeah. Like if you consider an elephant standing on a mouse, there's
Yeah.
a fair bit of imagery there. First of all, of course the mouse is going to get squashed. Is it
Yeah.
though? The other thing I find interesting is elephants are terrified of mice. So the fact that an elephant is standing on a mouse is, I think, significant imagery for Ganesh as well, which ChatGPT didn't pick up on.
Mm.
So, and why is the elephant scared of the mouse? Not because it's a ferocious thing, but because, it's my understanding is they're afraid of being tripped up by this little thing that's running around, right?
I
They
can
don't know
see
where
that.
to put their feet, and so they get scared.
Mm.
And it's a very simple thing, but what does that mean when you're talking about Ganesh? That could add a
Right.
whole other layer.
Well, I was going to say, like, my experience with Ganesh so far is Ganesh very much took charge and is like, this is what we're doing, this is how it's going, and this is what needs to be done. But there's no, it was just, this needs to be done and we're doing it, and here's what's happening. Like Ganesh, to my understanding from everything I've seen about Ganesh, Ganesh is usually portrayed as jovial, at least in the stuff I've seen, right? Because you have the elephant-headed guy with the belly because he likes sweets and he's involved in a lot of
Or
festivals. So go ahead.
or because the belly represents the world. I've
Yeah.
heard that as well.
Well, yeah, because it signifies, yeah, it doesn't signify he likes to eat a lot. It signifies, what did it say here? I disappeared the belly. The belly.
Because sweetness has something to do with the sweetness of spiritual discipline, which is
Yeah,
an
there's more
interesting
to it than just a
concept.
sweet. Yeah. No, it must have been something else I was reading. Anyway, yeah, the belly doesn't necessarily represent he's fat. It does actually have a greater, there is a symbolism behind the belly other than he likes sweets in the sense of
Always.
gluttony. Yeah.
Yeah. There's always a symbolism behind that. It usually means prosperity and abundance, right? Because if you can have a big belly, then you must be prosperous enough to feed it.
Right.
But it can also mean bigger things, if you'll pardon the expression, such as the roundness of the world.
Yes.
So
It's funny.
there's a lot of things that you can, aspects of Ganesh that you could listen to, look at, and even consider for yourselves, people listening to the podcast, what would you interpret that as? In fact, a fun exercise would be to get yourself an image of Ganesh and just look at it before you read stuff.
Right.
And what would you why does the representation have one tusk? What's that about? Before you read it, because
Yeah,
I've heard different interpretations to the one that ChatGPT gave you. So,
yeah,
what is it? Well, nothing is there by accident, right? Every single aspect of any representation of a deity has a point to it. There's a purpose for it. And it might not, well, no, it's probably not going to be the superficial thing that you see. They always represent something.
right. Actually, yeah, his missing a tusk represents something that, depending on what you know about Ganesh, would almost seem contradictory at first,
Right.
to my understanding. But I never realized that part of him that he had a broken tusk. That's new to me. Same thing with the riding of the mouse. But now that having heard of why he has a broken tusk, it does make sense to me that he has that. But since
Right.
we're waiting for
So,
people will figure that one out on their own. What was I gonna say? Yeah, because there's always like so far what I've like working with these spirits that have showed up, there's always something a little bit different, but shouldn't be unexpected. But that shouldn't be unexpected. Like Baba Yaga being showing up as a crone, but yet being flirty. This is not an uncommon thing for older women. I've seen lots of older women be flirty, even if they do have the imagery of a crone, like, you know,
the classification as a cougar comes from somewhere, and older women are typically less inhibited than the younger ones
right.
by all the societal strictures. And so they can let their inner
Yeah,
self shine forward and notice things and make comments on things that their younger selves probably wouldn't have. What you're
right.
seeing is something that was always there. They're just letting it shine up now because, there's no reason not to. They
Yeah,
don't care what you think anymore.
right. And that kind of helps with this episode because the idea is don't limit yourself by what you know of a spirit, but
Oh,
go and explore
100%.
further what they're actually capable of. Because even with Quetzalcoatl kind of had a bit of a frustration of always using serpent-like, imagery or ideas. Like even he didn't do the molting because, and it was the grandfather Quetzalcoatl, because to my understanding of Quetzalcoatl's attitude when this was happening was, this isn't my scene. I don't like doing this part. Like it's
Okay.
too, almost as in, this is too cliche and I don't really want to do it.
And interestingly, Ganesh has a serpent around his belly. At least I have a Ganesh representation here, and I'm pretty sure he has a serpent around the belly. And the purpose of that, to my understanding, is that that's what holds it all together. So make of that what you will, given the imagery of serpents. So in the sort of Christian version of the Garden of Eden, the serpent's the bad guy, right? In other representations, the serpent is Lilith,
Right.
who's trying to cause trouble, or in a different mythology, she's actually trying to open Eve's eyes to what's going on
Well, that's
and,
important, right?
support her sister.
Mm.
So the serpent, good guy, bad guy.
Even, and there's so much more imagery even with the snake. The snake is actually a wizard, in fact. And there's a whole biblical book based on the serpent or the identity of the serpent that's not included in the Bible. Like there's so many like that's the thing, right? There's so many stories
Mhm.
that are out there and you can have and people tell different versions of the story. So you shouldn't limit your work with spirits by the stories.
Oh, totally not. They're just somebody's version.
Right.
You can make it that's why I invited people to have a look at Ganesh and see what you see. What do
Right.
you envisage all of that represents? Because there's versions of mythology that you hear, they're stories. And there can be meaning in there, particularly if you accept that meaning. If you attribute that meaning, then you'll create it, right? And if you reject that meaning, well, what else do you have? What are you going to put in its place? And that's not to say you can't do it. That's to say, by all means, but figure it out. How are
Right.
you going to relate to that aspect? Because for my perspective, as you may well have picked up already, I get a little annoyed at serpents being, and snakes being cast as the bad guy. It's like
Right.
this is just it's the most arbitrary and ridiculous attitude to take. Like, why are they bad? What have they done to you? And literally you can see a snake in the wild and it's not going to do anything to you most of the time. There was one time I was visiting a friend. We were living in Singapore and I was walking up the driveway and we'd had some rain, but it had stopped. I was walking up the driveway and coming down the driveway on the other side was a black cobra. I saw it. I don't know if it saw me, but I saw it. And I just said, hey, let's make a deal. You go your way, I'll go mine, and we're both fine.
Right.
And whether it hurt me or whatever, it went its way, I went my way, and we were both fine. Nobody needed to mess with anybody else. And that was a
Right.
black cobra. You could have forgiven me for being a little nervous about that, but I wasn't
Yeah.
bothering it. So why is it going to come bother me? But, some people will run over snakes intentionally. You might want to consider your actions here. Why are you doing that? Where's that fear coming from? And if you're in a car, do you need to do that? Really? Why? It doesn't make sense unless you're buying into a story you heard as a child. And if you're still doing that, well, examine it, look at it. Is it necessary? Is it helping you? And if you're trying to do spiritual work, I assure you, snakes show up everywhere. So you might want to reconsider what you're doing here.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned the car. I'm going to use this as a kind of a segue for a funny story. So I had a dream last night. The last night? No, it was the night before. No, it was after I had a Reiki session on Thursday. Yesterday was Friday, so it was Thursday night. So I had a dream. I was going to pick up my older sister at the cottage, and she likes to play tricks on people, right? So I pulled in. She's like, "Oh my God, there's something in the woods there. It's really scary." And it's nighttime. So I'm like, I kind of shift the car so I can look in. And actually, in the woods, there's like, at first I assumed it was a bear and had like the red eyes and stuff like that. I was like, oh, okay, this is not like an animal right there. I was like, I know you think you're being funny, but there's something in the woods. So then she jumps in the car and she grabs the steering wheel because she needs to drive when she panics. I don't know why it's the thing. So I'm like, okay, it's coming after us, but like if you pull really close to it, I'll open the door and we'll like kind of ram it kind of a thing. And so some of the dream is just like trying to kind of wear it down like that. But then we fall into a ravine, the car, my sister, me, and the ravine where it opens up is actually a building inside where the thing was summoned from. And there's people in there who have come to who are coming to take care of it. And everyone's arguing what to do. And I'm like, okay, the car fell on it. It's weak right now. Let's just take it out. Like, because there was some light and it was weak to light. I don't know how I knew that. I just assumed it was because it was a shadow creature. So I pick it up. I go stand in the light and I go here, and then it fades away because of the light. But then it's like, but it's a dark place otherwise than a few things of light coming in, right? A few beams of light coming in. So then it's like we can hear people further down where it's darker, and they're trying to summon it again because you can hear them chanting and stuff like that. And we're like, oh crap. So now I'm like, okay, I'm tired of everyone's shit. This is how I'm feeling in the dream. Just fought a demon, whatever, fell down on her feet, listening to people argue who are supposed to be taking care of the demon. So I walk up, I see there's like three people. One I just grabbed by the shirt, yanked them, throw him down. I kicked the other one. And then the person who's actually the center of the thing, the ceremony, I'm like, why are you doing this? What is the point in this? But surprisingly, as frustrated as I was in the dream, I actually meant it from a legitimate place of like, what do you really need? Like, what are you getting? Like, what literally, what is going on with you that you felt you needed to summon some kind of shadow monster or some kind of shadow demon? Like, what is it? What can we do to make so that you don't need this? But the dream was actually funny to experience because there's a lot of comedic notes in it. There was a point to me sharing it.
Chris, I would ask you about your dream though. Um, Given what you've said in this episode already, you made some limiting assumptions about that shadow monster, right?
Right.
Even the
Hmm.
term shadow monster,
Right.
shadow being, maybe,
Hmm.
but does that automatically mean bad? There's going
Well,
to be another side to it. So, what gave you that interpretation? And like it was coming after you, but was that necessarily bad? You had that experience of the crow, for example.
yeah.
I don't know. Most people would say that was bad. So I'm not asking you to analyze your dream
Right.
on air. I'm just saying it's a line of inquiry for you to consider.
Yeah.
And that I think I'm getting the impression that's what this particular episode is
Yeah.
about, is lines of inquiry for people.
Hmm.
How, when you catch yourself having said something that was very assumptive and definite, is it though? Like,
Yeah.
is there anything else you want to bring into that, or that could be you could be open to? And I'm not saying
Well,
there has to be, I'm just saying it's a question.
my own interpretation of this idea is that so when we fell through the ravine, the car fell on it, and then it was virtually powerless because I was just able to pick it up and go, let's go. Right. I'm going to put you in some light, dissolve you, and we're done. So it already wasn't as powerful as it was already presented as it seemed to be. Right.
Or maybe you were more powerful.
Well, yeah, because what I'm trying to get at is the people summoning it are probably stand-ins for me making the same old decision over and over and over again and trying to get something out of it. So
Could be.
instead,
I mean, that's the amazing thing with dreams is
right,
they mean something, and they mean a lot of things, and they can mean nothing depending on how you want to interpret them. But I love it when you can remember them because there's so much to look at. Just like,
yeah.
what does that mean? And just like looking at the representation of Ganesh, it is likely not the superficial meaning, but it's what it represents. And
Well, and that's another idea I
that's
actually
pretty
wanted to
epic,
touch
right?
on. Yeah, it's another thing I wanted to touch on when you had mentioned it earlier too in the episode is that like with tarot, yes, you learn an interpretation of the cards, but often it's the imagery itself that inspires you. Like, I could pull out the High Priestess and the Empress. They're almost the similar cards, especially depending on the style you're looking at it as. And the imagery of the two are almost close, but there's obviously a difference, right? One is about the material world and one is about bringing in the spirituality. That's the big thing that separates the two as cards. Because they're both still motherly figures who are trying to give you benefit or trying to help you out, but it's where they're drawing their in or
Mhm.
what they're working on.
Where they're drawing their influence from too, spiritual or physical. And also note both are female power, both are powerful representations. Um, and both could be good or not, depending on your interpretation. And again, I'm
Right.
glad you mentioned tarot because just think of how many different tarot decks there are out there, in air quotes out there. And, it can be infinite because you can create your own and people do. And there's just, you can have a Pikachu one if you want. You can have a Dungeons and Dragons one. In fact, we have some decks downstairs that my husband's going to be selling at a goth market soon. Because they'll like those. Why? Because the imagery represents something that that person can connect to, or that they resonate with. They can see it and get something from that image, which is also with the deities that we look at. Ganesh, people
Mhm.
who revere Ganesh will see an image and be, happily connected to it and
Yeah.
feel some kind of safety even in, oh, here's my deity, and they kind of take some ownership. So we do this with imagery all the time.
Right.
It's just kind of an interesting feature that we don't always think about. And tarot is a great example. of how
Yes.
it's really how you interpret it. You know, you might have a little book with it that gives you interpretations. And again,
Right.
just like a book of spells, cool, but it's somebody else's. Do you want to do your own? You don't have to, but you can. You may
Yeah.
feel more connected to it if you do.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because I came across a video the other day that brought up the idea that the Bible is actually a spell book.
Well, praying is casting a spell. So yeah, let's see. Okay,
Even the
tell me
imagery,
more.
right?
Tell me more.
So even the imagery, like, and the person used the New Testament as one of the examples in that Jesus turning water to wine. It's not like, yes, the story says, but it's not the literally of turning water to wine. This symbolism of water and wine actually becomes more of an alchemical thing of
Oh
converting
yeah.
something that's in its plain form to something more, well, more enlightened, depending how you view wine. But wine is usually symbolized as a more enlightened version of something. So water being turned to wine is more of you transforming spiritually. And the whole goal of seeking eternal life through worshiping Jesus, not worshiping Jesus, it's becoming Jesus.
Mm. Hence drinking the blood, huh?
Yeah.
Which coincidentally is the wine.
Yeah. Now he goes and he talks about a lot of other stories, but the video was only like half an hour long and it was like a lot of names to remember of different figures and stuff like that. But the idea being that it's actually a spell book. And if you decode it, then there's your spell book. Don't look
That
at
makes
don't look at
sense.
the literal symbolism, but look at what those symbols actually mean.
Hmm. Well, if you take the word miracle out of
Right.
there and you replace it with magic and then read the story again,
Mm-hmm.
you have a whole different interpretation. And anybody that's listening to this that has a religious leaning has probably just lost the plot a little bit. It's okay, take some deep breaths, come back. We do that here. And it's okay, right? Because as you've been told something, and this does seem to be the theme for today, we're told something, and so we believe it because we were told it by people who are supposed to know, right?
Right.
When you're a kid. So you take that as being truth. But where did they learn it from, and how do they know it's truth? And typically, you can just with some self-examination look back and say, "Oh, okay, this is just a story that's being passed on. It's an oral tradition, right? It's not um there is no point where you can say, there, that's how I know it's the truth. Unless you're really into the religious fervor of, well, it's all about faith, and I leave that one to another podcast to deal with.
Right. I
You know,
mean,
it's
you,
like,
you discuss faith, but we discuss faith in yourself.
uh-huh.
And that leads you to then understanding the world because you know you're not going to lie to yourself if you have faith in yourself enough.
Yeah, the thing with having faith in
Mhm.
somebody else's interpretation of what's important is that you aren't in it. It's not about you, it's about them and their interpretation. So, in what way does that work for you? How are you connected to it? And if you're wanting to do magic, if you're wanting to work with magic, a big part of that is being connected to your practice, connected to what you're doing. You envisage, you connect to, you understand what you're working on. And if you're working with somebody else's story, it's kind of hard to do because there's no personal thing there. You know, what's the point? If you're not in there, what's the point?
Yeah, it's funny. So Ganesh interrupted with something. So we're on the right track there. Like so, using the Bible, the symbolism is actually making it's actually a spell book. So that ties into right to alchemy because alchemist books are like totally evasive. You have to understand why they're using zodiacs and stuff like that to identify things. So, once you get past that symbolism and you understand what they actually mean, kind of like, right, the whole idea of eye of newt being mustard seed.
Yeah.
And you can get past those kinds of symbolisms and you understand it, you know what they're talking about. And so what Ganesh is telling me right now is so the spell he cast, right, was to give him that connection to the universe that he can then share with me. And it's the same idea. Like, so he went in and looked at the deeper sense of the universe, not just the superficial of it. He looked at the actual fabric of the universe, for lack of a better wording. That's also the imagery, right? He was like interweaving himself into the tapestry of the universe. So that's kind of the idea. So it's like, don't take the face value symbols. Look at
Mhm.
what those symbols can actually represent. And even if you're not as knowledgeable, like say for alchemy, to know what the zodiac signs actually mean in alchemy, take what they inspire in you first. Like start there and then work
Mhm.
your way in. Because alchemy really, yes, you it is the father of chemistry. Like it literally is. Like there's recipes in alchemy that are still used today in chemistry. So there's no like that's it being just useless, pageantry is that's not a thing. Like it has legitimate uses in real life. But there's the bigger symbolism of it's about transmuting yourself into a higher being versus, from the base to the divine or whatever it is. So base metals into gold, right? That's the symbolism. You're taking something that's mundane and you're making it extraordinary. However you want to accept
Yeah,
that wording.
that's pretty good wording, I think. Yeah. So what I'm getting as we talk is that the big takeout from this is absolutely looking beyond the superficial.
Mm,
And I the image that I'm getting is actually sitting in a meditation practice
right.
with an image of Ganesh in front of you. And even if that's a picture on your computer screen, like it's what you don't have to go out and spend money on this, but the idea is that you just sit with it. Sit a
Right.
while. I have time, right? As you said right at the beginning, come sit a while.
Yes.
We both have time. So that to me suggests a meditation practice. And the meditation would be really looking into Ganesh. What is Ganesh? What's there for you? And again, don't come at us with this whole cultural appropriation thing because I, for one, reject those boundaries. And, I'm not interested in those boundaries because this is a matter of connection at a higher level than
Right.
earthly boundaries of, you don't look this way, therefore you can't. So don't
Right.
bother us with that.
Spirits don't share your boundaries.
And neither do I. So
Yeah.
take them and put them somewhere else.
Yeah. And that's kind of the deviation a little bit from the previous seasons, right? Uh, we're kind of now moving into here's how to work with these spirits. Like Ganesh is looking for you to look past the obvious.
Yes.
Look
And
for
where is your new beginning? Where is that new beginning? What would it look like? What do you need
out of
to
the beginning.
end?
So yeah,
And what do you need to end in order to have that new beginning? I mean, taking a really obvious example, we wouldn't be in season 5 if we hadn't ended season 4,
right.
right? You can't do both. So where are you naturally at an ending point of something in your life? And what is the beginning next? Whether that's your magical practice or something that opens up more possibilities for you to practice. Um, or maybe it's not even to do with magic, right? It's just that's our focus for this podcast. But
Yeah.
take it and apply it wherever it fits.
Yeah. But it's funny because yes, that beginning thing of sit with me, take a moment to sit with me.
Hmm.
So if you want to work with Ganesh, take a moment to sit with him. That's how you're going to start your practice with Ganesh. You're going to sit there and you're just going to sit with Ganesh and vibe with each other.
Hmm.
That's what Ganesh, yeah, that's what he's saying. That's what he's looking for. If you want to work with me, that's how we're going to start. You're going to sit and you're going to vibe with me, which makes me wonder how much influence they're actually exerting on Chat GTP. a PT. Dyslexia, the gift that keeps on giving.
Well, the downloads that we get can come from all kinds of sources of inspiration,
Right.
right? Including ChatGPT, because neither of us knew where this conversation was going to go today, which is usual. We don't know where our conversations go, but themes come up, downloads happen, and
Right.
we end up with an episode. And quite often by the end of it, you and I are looking at each other and saying, "Oh, hey, that was the point." That's what came
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
We
That's
don't
true.
know because you can't plan these things, or at least perhaps the spirits can, but we can't. It's not. The more you try and control what's happening, the less can happen. Wow, that was actually important. Put an underline on that one. The more you try and control what's happening, the less can happen, and that can apply to figuring out how something is going to happen or how it works. The how of something is going to really narrow your parameters for practice.
Right.
So that's significant. And if you look at Ganesh, Ganesh is expansive to look at.
Yes.
This is not a small being. This is the view that you get, the perception, for me at least, is of a very expansive, like I can envisage this deity just expanding to fill everything we know about the universe and then more. So if you're putting
Yes.
these strictures, if you're limiting yourself in some way to how you can work with that deity or what you know about it and so on, you're going to limit what you get.
Yeah. So that symbolism, did that come to you just today? Or have
Yep,
you always?
just as I was talking.
Yeah,
No,
because
literally just as I was talking.
that's literally the spell that was cast, him expanding into the universe and being
Okay.
someone who gives like I had asked ChatGPT about it, and that's where I got the he's the download moderator or manager.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
if you're looking to enhance yourself cosmically, for lack of a better expression, Ganesh is the deity to talk to. He'll feed it. He'll work with you in giving it to you. He'll manage the downloads for you. Yeah, right now, if you're seeking wisdom, like of the broader universal kind, Ganesh is your go-to. He's nice and
Okay.
woven to the fabric of the
Hmm.
cosmos, and he's willing to. I'm laughing because I had said this before in the podcast, right? I had done a kind of a science fiction version of a fantasy novel
Hmm.
for myself. And so what passes for magical items are really alien technology, and the ones that were done by aliens who are acting like the gods. So they have a database, and then I named the aliens after gods in mythology, and the god that is handling and doing the inventory and doing the tutorials on how to use the items is Ganesh.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, so it just kind of I thought when I was coming on this train of thought, it was like, oh, that's funny because that's how I was using him in my writing.
Hmm. Yeah, so I think looking beyond the superficial and really going deep. And I said meditation because it's a focus, right? You're focusing on your breath to get to that place of calm
Yeah,
where you can be open enough to receive the information that's coming to you.
right.
Um, and to build that connection. And if you think that sounds really weird and nonsense, then where have you been? And you need to go listen to the other four seasons
Yeah,
because if you're still here, you should be used to the weirdness by now.
yeah. I want to offer this up because you said that. So I saw Willa yesterday. For the listeners, if you remember, we interviewed Willa twice on the podcast, and she had no idea who Ganesh was.
Hmm.
I'm like, of all Hindu gods, if you know one, like I said, right, there's the top three. There's Shiva, there's Kali, and there's Ganesh. Those symbolisms are like everywhere as far as because like when you have thousands of gods, right?
Hmm.
I don't know why I'm mentioning this specifically. It always sits in the back of my head that there's a monkey god in Hinduism
Oh yeah.
that to me kind of I don't know if equate is the proper word with Sun Wukong, who is the Monkey King. Like I've kind of always kind of intertwined them in my head, not as in they're the same being, but there's a lot of similar symbolism between the two. Because one of the things that the Hindu monkey god is known for is his strength. So is Sun Wukong. But Sun Wukong is a fictional character written in a novel and not actually a religious figure, to my
Yes, but
understanding.
could be based on.
Yeah,
Could be
it's probably
based
based
on.
on the Hindu
Yeah.
monkey.
And that's the thing about the stories you hear, right? Because that embedded itself in your psyche somewhere, right? As being a thing to remember and to refer to. And then you come across the monkey god, and right away the comparison comes up between the two. If you haven't heard that story, then you don't have that comparison and you're going to go somewhere else with it. So maybe you have seen monkeys at the zoo, or maybe you've lived in Asia and you've had them come and steal your sandwich and your sunglasses. Either way, you're going to
Yeah,
have a different experience of them, right? And how you experience or recollect somebody else's version is going to impact how you look at them, which is why slowing down and just connecting, sitting, I'm absolutely sticking with meditation with a focus on the deity that you're looking at now. And for today, we're talking Ganesh.
right,
Um, that will, I think, shed a lot of those stories as they come up. We all know stuff. We've picked it up from somewhere, but
right,
we need to be able to put that down in order to see past it. It's like layers of veils, and you got to peel off those veils of stories to get to, and what else is there? What else is there?
right,
What's the point? Because the story isn't the point. The story can be distracting you from the point sometimes. And that's where the meditation comes in. And how often should you do it? Whenever you feel called. How
right.
long? However long you feel called. Like there's no rules. And we've said this in several episodes, I think, by now. There's rules. You'd go with the flow, literally. Go with what seems correct. Just like we do with the podcasts. There is no clock in the corner ticking where we
Right.
say, oh, okay, we've got 5 more minutes. Eek, we have to get out of here. I'm sure you figured that out by now because some of these
Yeah,
episodes are pretty
because
long.
we have episodes that are an hour and 15 minutes. We have
Uh-huh.
episodes 3 hours and 15 minutes. We have episodes 2 hours and a half, 2 hours and like 57 minutes, and like yeah, so whatever needs to
Huh?
be said gets said.
They go where they
Which is
go.
why, yeah, which is why also maybe don't treat this like a regular podcast because it's not a regular structured programming. We are consistently recording once a week. I am not necessarily consistently uploading or marketing it, but yeah, it shows up when it needs to show up,
Mhm.
and that's
Because it's
there's
really a no rule situation, right?
right.
It's
That's the thing, right?
just,
Like the primordial magic is essentially your connection that you can make and how well you flow, and that depends on you and how you connect to things
it
and how
does.
well
And
you are to connect.
and you'll know if this is a connection for you, and I'm dipping into human design for this one, but you'll know based on your response to it. Like if there's zero interest, or you're just like, oh, okay, uh-huh, all right, I'll put it on my list, then perhaps that's not the one for you at this time. And it doesn't
Yeah,
mean it never is. Doesn't mean it
right,
never is. It just maybe you're not ready yet. I mentioned earlier on, um, when you focus on, past traumas and problems and so on, we tend to do that because we don't feel satisfied that whoever inflicted it has suffered yet. And here's the thing, they're not going to suffer by you staying in the story. So, just learning to say, okay, it's valid, it's there, and I don't need to keep carrying it. What happens when I put this down? Maybe give it to a deity. Do you have a deity that deals with this? If you don't,
Mm.
find one, make one, create one, get a connection that does light you up that you can say, okay, I'm done with this. Would you please take it and do something useful with it?
Yeah.
Because energy exists all the time. It doesn't go away, it doesn't stop. It simply changes form.
Right.
And that applies to anything that you're going to work on. You can say alchemy, you can say magic, but if you boil water, it doesn't stay water. It starts to evaporate into steam, right?
Right.
The energy's still there. It just changed form. So you can take the things that block you, the things that are in your way, the stuff you're carrying, and you can transform it into something else. One of the ways to do that is through a connection with a deity and to just say, okay, here you go, it's yours.
It kind of brings me back to when I had discussed fear eaters. And I had encountered, a fear eater who was like, you have a pain, I eat, you have a fear, I eat fear. Let's work together. And I've encountered fear eaters that will go out of their way to increase your fear to feed off of you. So kind of what the idea here is that just because something is uncomfortable and not good for you, there are spirits out there who probably, hey, that's their lunch in quotes. That's what they need.
And also it doesn't have to stay in the form it's in, right? Make like boiling water and turn it into something else. And typically you can do that when you've got something outside of yourself to work with, such as a deity that you're connected to. This is one of the reasons a lot of people will become born again Christians or they'll
Right.
go into some kind of very strong religious group that are absolutely rule bound and definite about how things are, and there's no variation allowed, and so on and so forth. Why would somebody voluntarily go into that? Well, because it offers them a rule book
Right.
when they don't feel that they're in control, and it offers them
Right.
a way to say, okay, this happened to me and I'm going to give it to Jesus and now everything will be all right. It's kind of a connection to a deity, only you're
Yeah.
being mediated by a rule-bound group. And that to me is where the problem comes in. Because you don't need to be regulated like that. You don't need to have the rules that somebody else makes. And I'm standing by that statement. I'm
Yeah.
not going to back down on that one. You don't need man-made religion for this.
Yeah. Plus the whole idea, thinking back on a meme I had seen quite some time ago, going along with the idea of, Jesus take the wheel. And the
Uh-huh.
meme with the person's in the car going, Jesus take the wheel, they're praying, and Jesus is like in the back seat, reaches over, goes, oh my God, what are you doing? And swerving all over the road. He says, like, I never learned to drive. I walked all over Canaan.
Right.
Yeah. Think
Yeah,
of that.
it's
Ask the right God for the right thing. Choose their.
this is true, but also be reasonable. Like, what
Yeah.
are you expecting from this? And how invested are you? Are you just making an assumption that's gonna end up not working because it's a one-way street? Like, what are we doing here? I think
Well, and
that's
that's
where you start separating the story of how it's going to be to the practice of this exchange, this engagement, this connection, right?
it makes me think of even your personal relationships. Like you may know someone with a certain reputation and maybe even an earned reputation, but with you, they're different and they behave differently, and there's a whole different manifestation of them in your presence. So even if you do go out and you see a certain symbolism for, for a spirit you're working with, they may be very different with you.
Yep.
And I use the example of Baba Yaga, right? Like all the stories I've ever heard of her, she's either like kindly and grandmotherly, or she's like, a real witch, quote unquote. But with me, she's flirty. So it's like I've never heard a story of a flirty Baba Yaga, and yet that's how she
Right.
interacts with me. So, and that's why it's important, right? Like you want an idea of where to go to who to seek help from. So look at the stories, see what talks to you, but don't necessarily expect the behavior that you see in the story when you
Right.
actually communicate, because they're still going to have their own personal connection to you.
Yeah, I do feel that connecting first and not learning the stories, if you don't know them already, can be helpful too, because you're going with a fairly blank slate.
Yeah,
And so it can show up in different ways. Like, and if you find you're having a very 3D judgment, like, oh, well, that's a fat belly, so this one must be greedy.
right.
Okay, where'd that story come from? I think we can be fairly clear on where it did, but is that true? Is it true for you? And what else are you judging?
Yeah,
What else do you find a lack where maybe it isn't? What else could it be? So there's a lot you can do with those kind of meditations. Just being open to what comes.
yeah,
There's who knows what's right and what's wrong. You have your relationship with that deity, and that's it. That's what it is. And that's correct for you because that's what you have.
yeah. I mentioned the stories because, like, so say working with Grandfather Wolf, right? Grandfather Wolf hasn't worked with a human being in I don't know how long. So there's no real stories to go with Grandfather Wolf. So all I have is a personal connection. I mean, plus the intro from Brother Wolf. But with known gods, or with known spirits that are popular, I mean, I think you almost can't help but start with the story because because you've heard of them and someone usually gives you their interpretation. But the idea is don't be stuck on that interpretation. But if you need a place to start with a story, but never, 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 never be bogged down by that story.
That is the idea. Yes. Yeah.
Like, because even like when I think of like my work with Hecate, Hecate is one of the traditional portrayals of Hecate is, there's three faces, the maiden, the mother, the crone.
Hmm.
And I don't see her that way. She doesn't show up to me like that. No matter how much in my mind I visualize that, it's like she doesn't show up like that.
Right.
She shows up however she wants, whatever phase she wants to
Mhm.
show up in.
And they do, right? And sometimes it can be through the animal that you associate with that deity too. Or
Yeah, I was gonna.
sometimes the deity is an animal.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It happened to me one time. Someone had showed up to me as the animal associated with them, and not as their human portrayal. And it didn't
Mm,
throw me off. I was just like, well, that's different. Like I've never thought about it. I mean, like I could understand the animal showing up as a messenger, but not the actual spirit showing up as the animal. That was a different experience for me. I don't even remember who it is. I've worked with so many spirits there in the last so many years that it's like, who's
right.
what? I'm actually starting to feel bad, but
Because again, being limited to it must look this way,
Mhm.
or this form is worth paying attention to, and that form isn't. There's stories there. There's that's getting in the way of why is it in this form? What's there?
Right.
What's the purpose? What can you get from that? And that's, I think, an interesting. Again, today's all about line of inquiry and looking into what's there. What what am I missing?
Yeah, that's his. Yeah, that's Ganesh's big thing because he inserted himself into the universe to take on a more cosmic knowledge stance. So that's what he's offering going forward. You want the cosmic knowledge? Sit with me, and we'll go from there. Yeah.
Mhm.
But I think really a common thing that's going to come out because I'm being encouraged to say this, is that your personal connection is going to really matter. Not that we haven't said that
Yes.
in some way or another, like thousands of times on the podcast, but that's the stories might lead you to them, but don't let them lead you away from them because you're stuck on the story. So yeah. So if you can't bring a honey cake to Hecate, don't worry about it. That's not the end of the world, but bring the intention as if you were giving an offering. I get like, we've kind of played with the word devotion. I think was it last episode? You know, like
I
yeah,
think
show
so.
your connection, show your desire, show your desire to create that bond. It's like working with anyone, that you want to you the better connected you are, the better the flow of the work, or the easier the
Yeah,
flow.
you could substitute the word attention for devotion if you wanted to. If for the listener who's trying to figure out, well, what do you mean devotion? Like, is that the same as worship? It's a connection. Like if you're in a relationship with someone, do you not need to pay attention to them? Do you
Right.
not want their attention? So it's attention. It's like, what do I need to bring to this that acknowledges the existence of the other side of this relationship? What am I bringing to you? What am I looking for in return? How do we communicate this? Where are we in this situation? It's basically a relationship. So if you don't like the word devotion, if it sounds a little too religious, then look at, attention, connection, like any of those kind of words that involves more than you. It's the other side as well, back and forth. You could see an umbilical cord,
Yeah.
between the baby and the mom. That's a super highway. It's information. It's back and forth. And it's essential, right? If they don't have that, then the rest doesn't happen. You have to have a functioning umbilical cord. If it's not working, you got a problem. So,
Right.
that rope that Ganesh holds, that connection that you have, the one that he led you with,
Mhm.
all of this, it's very much a case of not being tied to, but having a channel with, having a tunnel to get to that other being.
Right. You know, and I was wondering why this was sitting in my brain for the last couple of days, but so we had discussed the idea, like I had discussed, my mom had decided to stop asking for, good luck with bingo for winning, right? And kind of part of the discussion was that you didn't want to overwork the spirits in question. But was brought back to me because, again, because I was writing short stories, and one of the characters that actually was based on me could create tulpas. Or when I was writing them, I called it astral avatars, and they were parts that went out and did stuff. And I knew writing it that this was a representation of this is what happens when you actually communicate with spirits. They can be in multiple places at once because they just basically send an avatar out, you know, from themselves to handle that task, just like a tulpa would. But now that we've discussed tulpas, it's easier to make that connection and bring the visualization of what that means to the people listening or to the listeners. So, like, yeah, so if you're working with a spirit and someone else is working with one at the same one at the same time, don't worry about it. It's basically you're working with avatars of the actual spirit. So you're good to ask for stuff. And it's not the same burden as it is asking a person who is single focused, single manifested. I don't know what word to use there.
I kind of see deities, spirits, however you want to refer to what you're working with, as like air, right?
Hmm.
If you're breathing, it doesn't mean somebody else can't breathe. If
Right.
if you're, running and taking tons and tons of air in because you're running fast, it doesn't mean somebody else can't, right? It's just it's there. And so you have your part, your space that you take up, your connection, and
Right.
it doesn't affect anybody else's. So it's absolutely 100% fine to be in connection in a way that's legit for you. But I would also say, look at that perspective of, well, if I have it, somebody else can't.
Mm.
And I'm going to say that person who thinks that way probably has some pretty scarcity lack kind of approaches to money. And the reason I
Right.
say that is because they tend to think, well, there's only so much to go around, and so I can't have lots because somebody else does, or some kind of thing like that. You'll see this false equivalency argument, particularly in the US, where somebody will say, well, would you rather home veterans or
Right.
raise
Yeah.
the minimum wage? And it's like, what is this bullshit question? The
Yeah.
answer is both. Like, it's not pie. We can all benefit. We
Hmm.
can all do this. Money is literally growing on trees and getting printed. So,
Right.
yeah, you can. So if that comes up as a, well, I don't want to ask too much because I might annoy them or wear them
Right.
out or run out of something, then
Mhm.
look at where else that shows up in your life and
Yeah.
make a decision to step out of that particular movie scene and create one where you have abundance, you have whatever you want. And I heard this wonderful quote about wealth the other day that I'm kind of running with. Don't know why it comes in now, but it does. And that is, wealth is what you have left when the money's spent.
Well, that's what you have left in the
Profound,
money. Yeah.
right? Wealth is what you have left when the money is spent.
Right. Sorry, I'm getting cross signals here. Not from what you said, but from there's like a handoff happening between Ganesh and another spirit.
Hmm, okay.
You know what? It's funny. It's not in view yet, but at first, because it seems like there's like some kind of serpent element to it. And at first, and if I mispronounce this, especially given my heritage, if I mispronounce this, I thought it might be Jorgenmander. I don't know if I probably didn't pronounce that probably. We'll call it the Midgard serpent. Use the English calling for it. But that's not it. Now I'm trying to think, does this mean the episode's over? Ganesh is still here, but there's a interplay.
Hmm.
For the
I
list,
just
what's that, Michaela?
Is that Satyricon? No.
So in Norse mythology, right? The Midgard serpent wraps around the earth twice.
Okay.
The child of Loki and I don't know who else, but yeah. So earthquakes and stuff are usually attributed to him. And I'm trying, but it's not who it is. But I'm assuming it's a serpent of some kind. But I'm going to take a moment here to like, pardon the wording, but you have to realize if you're listening and you're at season 5 and you're really following, shit is real. Shit is getting real.
Hmm.
You're getting the how the spirits are interacting, how they're coming in. It's not just us speaking. It's the we always give you the behind the scenes because we talk and we end up talking shop halfway through a discussion. So there's a trade-off going on right now. Trade-off, yeah. Handoff? Handoff. That's what I'm looking for. And you know what? Yeah. Once the handoff is done, that's the end of the episode. Huh. Yeah, so you guys are getting like the very real what's happening now in 2025, especially this part of it and how the spirit world is working.
Mm. Well, we've mentioned before that this is the great reveal going on right now,
Right.
right? We're seeing what's always been there, and it's just really getting uncovered, and by and large, pretty darn nasty stuff we're looking at too. So
Right.
the question there is, are you going to keep staring at that that hot mess? Are you going to keep focusing on it and buying into it? Or are you going to turn around and make a connection elsewhere and do something different? Because for those who are asking about their purpose, and what are we here for and what's the point? And I can't do anything, it's all so bad out there. Well, your point, your purpose, and what you can do. And yes, absolutely, it's a dumpster fire out there. Totally. Gotcha. But your job is to raise your consciousness, raise your vibration, raise what you are putting out there so that you can help others lift up as well. Because if you
Right.
feed into that, if you feed into all of that negativity, then you're going down with it. So it's
Yeah.
time to make a choice. Are you going up or down? Because you're not staying stationary. We don't get to do that. It's not on the bingo card, right? Like it's not an option. So, how are you going to look at what's being revealed? What are you going to choose? Are you going to go with the dark, the mess, and decide that you take a side on it and hope that yours is right? Or do you see it for what it is, which is pretty ugly illusion that we don't have to buy into. You don't have to have that as your reality. When you wake up in the morning, you can focus on something else. You can choose a different direction. And just like deciding to leave your trauma stories behind doesn't mean
Right.
it's not there or valid or whatever you need it to be. It doesn't mean it's not those things. What it does mean is you're taking space from it. That's a
Right.
place to choose not to be connected to that. Take your connection and put it elsewhere. You don't need to feed into the fear, the anger, the negativity that's going on.
Yeah. So how to word this? So we're seeing, yes, the negativity and all that kind of stuff. So what's being laid bare before you is your solution if you're willing to pick it up. Like we just in this episode, we said to you, hey, look at the Bible from the perspective of that it's a spell book rather than, just a collection of stories for religion. And then we kind of got into alchemy and then, symbolism, stuff like that. But like if we were giving an assignment, this would be your assignment. Go back on all the religious stories you grew up with, but look at them from the perspective of a wizard. Because remember, the ChatGPT introduction of Ganesh was if you're going to think like a wizard, you should also see like a wizard.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Change your perspective.
right. Look at these stories through the lens of a wizard. And you know what? Look online, see what these symbolisms mean, both like say with alchemy or whatever practice, magical practices or in astronomy or astrology, sorry, or anything like that, and really see what those words mean or what those ideas presented mean versus the literal interpretation.
The thing is, they mean different things depending on your perspective, which is
Right.
the entire point, right? Because
Right.
if you bring in a different perspective
Mhm.
that's uniquely you, well, then you have a unique perspective coming to you.
Yeah.
The thing right now is we are being drawn into this big pit of anger, hate. Like I have seen some crazy stuff lately where people are saying, well, if you walk in the road, you should expect to get run over, and stuff like that. And it's just,
Yeah.
how do you arrive at that thinking? How? What happened? How did you end up there? And is that really the direction you plan to go in? Because, you might as well have a giant drill machine and just keep drilling down looking for the hell you're trying to create, because that cannot end anywhere good. Where did that perspective come from, and why are you buying it? Like, why are you deciding to attach to that? We don't have to. And okay, you might say, well, no, I'm arguing against it. Okay, the energy is the same, even though you're coming at it from the other side, but are you helping anything? Are you moving? You're not changing anybody's mind, because if that's the direction they're going in, there's no mind involved. This is totally below the mind, right? This is a sort of instinctive foot stomping temper tantrum kind of approach that's so punitive. You have to wonder where it's coming from. Like, wow, how did we get to that space? And in such a quick time. So you can't blame it on the people who are revealing it to us, per
Right.
se, because they cannot have created that much that fast. It had to have been there and they're revealing it. And then, it's like looking at Ganesh, which is far more peaceful though.
Mm.
Do you want connection? Do you want to see what else is there? Or would you like to back away and choose a better option?
Yes. Yeah. It's funny. So Ganesh is gone. In
Okay.
this case is I have to figure out who this is. I'm not familiar. It's a serpent, and to my understanding, Egyptian, and that's the furthest my understanding on who this is. Who's next?
Okay.
But the idea, yeah. I am I am
There
disconnected
is an
right
Egyptian, there is an Egyptian oh, I love this. So for the listener, I Googled this to find out what was coming up for Danielle, and I get in ancient Egyptian mythology, the most prominent serpent deity is Apep, also known as Apophis, the god of chaos and darkness, who is depicted as a giant serpent. He's the arch enemy of the sun god Ra, constantly attempting to engulf his solar barge and plunge the world into darkness.
That's
And
who it
that's
is.
why I was laughing.
That's who it is. Because one of the names that kept coming to me was Amun Ra,
Okay.
Ra being the sun god. I'm trying to
Mhm.
remember where Amun Ra comes from. And I knew because it was like lurk and he's lurking in the shadows. So yeah, so I already forgot the name, but so that's my
The
week.
Lord of Chaos.
Yeah.
So that's so interesting. Uh-huh. That's what you just came up with, and you didn't have the words for it, but you had the image.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, that's what I said, right? So I thought it was the Midgard serpent at first. I wasn't sure because it's a very large snake. But yeah. And that's,
Yep. So this one is chaos and darkness.
yeah. Well, actually, we've done chaos, but we didn't do chaos and darkness. I don't. Well, did we? Did we present anyone who had darkness other than potentially Lilith? But anyone who actually symbolized darkness per se, like not just the metaphor, but
Well,
the
Lilith is known as the Dark Mother, but yeah,
yeah. So for
interesting.
people, so there's a lesson in this, right? Now that you said the name, I do know the name. Like I have heard the name before, but I couldn't think of it. So I got a name that would bring me to the name that would bring me to who he is. And that's a lesson for people who are listening. If you encounter a spirit and you can't quite place it, you'll get clues. Again, don't get stuck in the story. See where it brings you, but you can use it to start you, but don't get stuck on it. And now we know who the
Yeah,
guest is for next week.
if your story, your knowledge is limited in a certain way, but it's not quite the right fit, don't make like a toddler that's trying to put the square peg in the round hole. Literally accept that, well, it's close, but no cigar. Like it's not quite the right thing. What's close to this? And and then work out from there, which is what we literally just did in real time.
Right. Yeah. So you guys are getting like a an actual view of the workings instead of just getting us talking at the end. But we've been doing that for the last two seasons as well. I'm pretty sure where they've been hearing the wheels turning
Well,
the podcast.
we do a lot of wheel turning, that's for sure.
So yeah,
But that's the process too, right? And I think it also speaks to right at the beginning when you said, come and sit for a while. You have time, I have time. And I think that's the thing is you're not going to get it snap instant. Oh, this book's going to give me all the information I need. Oh, that's
right,
going to give me everything I need. It doesn't exist. It's not like that because things are constantly evolving and changing, just like the water turns to steam, which then turns to, water again, or maybe it goes the other way and turns into ice, but it's
right.
not static. It's changing. It does something.
Yeah. So this is interesting. I'm actually pretty excited about this. I'm kind of waiting to
God of
see what gets
chaos and
revealed.
darkness.
Yeah. But I'm also waiting. I'm kind of excited to see what gets revealed during this season. Not just the spirits that show up, but the mechanism, or not the mechanisms, but the behind the scenes stuff. Because now, like, that's two episodes now that in real time as we're recording, there's a shift in the spirits showing up. So you're actually getting to be in when we get them.
Hmm.
Ganesh showed up at the end of the last episode, and now already can't figure his name again. Can't think of his name. I know
I think it's APEP, or they usually pronounce it with a hard A. So APEP or Apophis.
Apophis is what I know him as. That's the name I
Apophis.
know. Yeah, that's the name I know. So now you're here and he's here. Ganesh is gone. So yeah. So I mean, essentially that's the end of this episode. But remember all these things, like because wow, like I can only imagine how deep we're gonna get going forward,
Mm.
and hence why there's a new season. Because
Well,
now it's not just
I'm reminded to bring my shadow tarot to next week's.
oh yeah. Ooh,
Mm.
yeah. So, listeners going forward, man, really tune in because it's going to be a show, I guess, going forward. Now you're going to have more interaction with the spirits, not necessarily directly, right? Because we're recording, but you're going to get a sense of what's happening behind the scenes, I guess, for lack
Well,
of a better.
you'll know what it is you were feeling
Yeah,
because often, what's opened up and activated is received if even if you don't realize quite what it
right.
is, right? So you may have already gotten some of this, or
Hmm.
you're ready for it at least. But it seems
Yeah,
correct to me that we're looking at the God of chaos and darkness right now. That seems fairly accurate. And again, there's no pessimism in what I'm saying. So don't look for any.
right. Well, that's a big one, right? We've discussed this already a couple times now, but I think even people listening are going to have to start looking at their language and how they
Mhm.
interpret words and the meanings they put behind it. Because, like I said, right, like even between you and I, there's been some word meanings where we've had to clarify because meanings have been shed. You
Right.
know, our connotations have been shed from those words, from our vocabularies, and now even thinking about the listeners, like we've gotten rid of a lot of baggage from our language and how we interpret words, and now it's like you, the listeners, it's time to also come into that space of shedding a lot of the
Mm.
baggage that comes with the words.
Yeah. I mean, openness. We got to be open. This is the open season, literally.
Right.
You got to be
Yeah.
open to what comes, what shifts, what changes, and pick up where you will, like pick up the threads that are laid down for you where you want them. what speaks to you. And if you're not ready yet, that's okay too. It's fine.
Yeah.
You be you, you be where you are, and start there.
Yeah. It's an exciting new time. I mean, it's definitely an exciting new time for me because, like I said, right? Like a lot of these spirits that would normally have a negative connotation, like Baba Yaga, I had already long since lost that kind of connection to them as beings. And so it's interesting to have a god of darkness and chaos come in. That's going to be interesting.
Mhm.
See what
It
biases I
is.
get rid of going forward and what drops from my
We're,
vocabulary.
we're both going to learn some things.
Yeah. All right. I just got a little bit of a snake nudge there. All right. So, yeah, I don't remember what the hell I'm supposed to. What do we say here again? Once again, I'm Daniel Dubois.
You can't leg up and stone.
Until next time.
Until next time.